We are rapidly escalating toward World War III. Friends, what I'm about to share with you today is one of the most dangerous escalations in rhetoric and strategy since the Cold War. Talk about potential strikes on NATO territory that could plunge the entire world into World War III. Russia, through its state media, military analysts, and Kremlin spokesmen, is issuing threats that reach far beyond Ukraine's borders. These warnings touch the United States, Britain, NATO, and every citizen who depends on stability in our fragile and modern world. Let's take this step by step because the pieces of this puzzle, when put together, paint a chilling picture of where the world may be heading. Recently, Russian state controlled television, fully loyal to Vladimir Putin. And mind you, Russian media is state owned and everything they put out is Kremlin approved. Okay. So this media proposed a shocking act of revenge against Britain. The idea detonating a World War II shipwreck in the Thames estuary that still holds more than 1,400 tons of explosives. We're talking 1.4 kilotons. This is like a mini tactical nuclear weapon. The reckoned question is the American Liberty ship SS Richard Montgomery, which sank near the Isle of Grain in 1944. To this day, its corroding mast poke above the waterline. Salvage teams removed some of the cargo years ago, but enormous amounts of explosives still remain on board. Like I said, 1.4 kilotons of explosives. On a late night propaganda show hosted by Vladimir Solovoy, however you know these Russian names, Ukrainian names, forgive me if I murder some of these because my tongue just isn't quite there. My Anglo tongue isn't quite there. But anyway, uh, he's speaking on a Kremlin with a Kremlin aligned historian, Dr. Andrei Sidorov. And Sidorov suggested that this ship could be deliberately exploited by Russian special forces. In fact, he recommended it. His words were chilling. He said, if you hit it, it will flood all the coastal villages and ports. So we need to start with that right today. And then with a smirk, he added, just don't accuse me of terrorism. Oh my gosh, guys. Now, seriously, he said, start now. Experts in Britain have long recognized this danger. A 2001 government study warned that if the Montgomery cargo detonated, it could cause up to 1 billion pounds in damages. And this is 24 years ago. There's been a little bit of inflation since then. And he said they further determined it could send a 1 meter wave into Kent and Essex coastlines and devastate nearby communities like Sheerness and Southend. Even my Anglo tongue don't always extend to Anglican territory. Anyway, so while the official risk of an accidental detonation is considered remote, the idea that Russian state media is openly suggesting such an attack highlights just how dangerous this rhetoric has become. This wasn't an offhand remark. It was broadcast to millions, and it was framed as a legitimate revenge against the UK, helping Ukraine cripple Russian oil refineries. Now, they're getting really mad about that over there. The whole population is getting pretty incensed about this. They're kind of getting up to their limits of toleration. There's long gas lines in Russia. Their economy is being wrecked. Of course, this is what Ukraine is trying to do. It's trying to break their economy so their war machine will come to stop. And, so is Trump policies for tariffs on countries that trade in Russia and buy Russian oil. So there you go. And we got a finger in it through that. But we must understand the context. Ukraine has been striking deep inside Russian territory, targeting these oil refineries, pipelines, and energy infrastructure. Recently, Ukraine even revealed a new cruise missile with a range of 1,800 miles, capable of hitting nearly any target inside Russia. This is supposedly of their own creation. Now, do you think everybody buys that story? But all that aside, these strikes have damaged Russia's ability to fund and fuel its war machine, which relies heavily on oil revenues. In retaliations, voices within Moscow call it not only for sabotage in the UK, but also for massive attacks on European refineries, particularly in the Netherlands, which serve as a hub for European energy. So they're wanting to hit, I'm seriously, NATO country, the Netherlands, strike their oil refineries. With covert operations, maybe, maybe not, but we don't know. It will be, guys, we're on slippery slope. Anyway, the message from Russia propagandists is blunt. The oil refineries in the Netherlands must burn. Everything they have must be destroyed. Now, you think after making a statement like that, the West will go, oh, it was just coincidental, even if it's a covert operation. I don't think so. Just look how we're already responding to the drones flying around in these countries like the Netherlands, Denmark, Norway, Poland, and other countries in the area, Romania. So this is economic warfare, but it's also a dangerous signal that the Russians are willing to escalate outside Ukraine, using energy as a weapon and potentially striking NATO territory directly. They're talking about acts of war, actual war on NATO territory. You're talking Article 5, and we're all hitched at the hip. We'll all go into it. Anyway, and then there's the Tomahawk cruise missile question. Is this the road to World War III? The Russians say it will be, possibly. So, meanwhile, in Washington, the United States is considering its own escalation. American officials are weighing whether to supply Ukraine with Tomahawk and the Barracuda cruise missiles. They are advanced, long-range weapons with ranges up to 1,500 miles or more. If deployed to Ukraine, Tomahawks could strike Moscow, St. Petersburg, and much of Russia's critical infrastructure. Reports suggest that President Biden had already expanded intelligence supports to Kyiv, helping Ukraine identify targets inside Russia. And Russia had expected that. But Trump had allegedly dialed that back, but now he's talking to restore it, and maybe even at a much higher level. So you can see how we're getting into this hip deep. To Moscow, this is not simply aid to Ukraine. It is an act of war. Colonel Igor Karachenko, sounds kind of like Kracharot. Anyway, he is a top Russian military and analyst and editor of the National Defense magazine. He has declared that sending Tomahawks to Ukraine would be casus belli, legal grounds for war. He argued that Ukraine cannot operate such missiles alone, meaning that the U.S. or British forces would have to be involved, and they're targeted. In his words, that would automatically put the United States and the United Kingdom at war with the Russian Federation. He did not mince words about how Russia would respond. He said, we will use our entire arsenal of conventional and nuclear weapons to eliminate such a threat. Now, this isn't just the Medvedev, talking now. This is getting wider. Like I said, all these guys are Kremlin approved in their messages. So this warning was echoed also by Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov. He's spokesperson for Putin himself, who asked, who can launch these missiles, even if they end up on Ukrainian territory? Can only Ukrainians launch them, or will the American military do so? And that's what they think. The implications are clear. Russia will not assume that these weapons are purely under Ukrainian control. So this is how miscalculations spiral into world wars. One side believes they're providing defensive aid. The other side sees it as a direct attack. Anyway, this is escalating, my friends, in Ukraine and beyond. As these threats swirl, the war on the ground rages on. Russian forces have intensified their nighttime drone and missile attacks. Bucha, Odessa, Sumy, Chernihiv, and Dnipropetrovsk, like I said, that's not my tongue, my friends, have been awestruck in recent days. In Odessa, a railway depot was bombed, injuring a locomotive operator. In Kyiv suburbs, dozens of drones smashed into residential neighborhoods. A deserted medical facility in Bucha, a city scarred with earlier Russian atrocities, was also hit. Deputy Prime Minister of the Ukraine, Oleski, however he says his name, Kuleba, he described this as another night for Ukraine, another difficult night for Ukraine, that is, and that Russia is deliberately trying to dismantle the country's infrastructure, roads, railway, power grids, and energy supplies. And that they are doing. Ukraine warns that Russia is using weapons dependent on foreign components, calling for tougher sanctions to cut out those supply chains. Again, they find this stuff crashed and they look at it, and some of the stuff says Texas Instruments on it. But for the people on the ground, the suffering is immediate. Power outages, destroyed homes, and a constant threat of bombardment. There's direct injury, psychological injury, but this will also apply to Russia when the tomahawks start flying. So you can see this is big trouble all around. But the bigger picture is our own vulnerabilities. So what does all this mean? It means we're teetering closer than ever to direct confrontation between nuclear powers. And it's not just the United States. Don't forget, France and Britain are also nuclear powers. And once they start getting hit at a certain level, who knows who's going to respond and how. Russia is threatening sabotage on British soil, floating the idea of detonating an explosive-laden shipwreck. Moscow warns that Tomahawk missiles in Ukraine would justify nuclear retaliation. The U.S. is increasing intelligence and weapons support, and Ukraine is pushing deeper into Russian territory, into Russia's energy infrastructure with its own new long-range weapons. And while all this plays out overseas, we must not ignore what it teaches us about our vulnerabilities right here at home. And this is what I've always been warning against. Modern war is not just about tanks and troops. It's about infrastructure. It's about energy. It's about the power that keeps our nations alive. If Russia is willing to consider detonating a sunken ship in order to wipe out towns of Britain, or to bomb oil refineries in the Netherlands to cripple economies, what do you think our adversaries see when they look at the U.S. power grid? Which, as I've been telling you, is really weak. Here in America, our grid is old, fragile, and exposed. A handful of substations could be attacked with simple weapons. Yeah, simple rifles or drones, not missiles, and plunge millions into darkness. Hackers have already probed our utilities. Russia did it to Ukraine before. They could do it right here in the United States or in any country that they deem to be a threat to them. This is not theoretical. In North Carolina, just a year ago, 2 substations were attacked with gunfire by, maybe a redneck or two. So they weren't necessarily the best experts on how to do this. But unlike the hit that occurred back in April 16, 2013, on the substation there, the Metcalf substation near San Jose in San Francisco in California. So, but in this case in North Carolina, it still wasn't without consequences. 40,000 people lost power. No cyber attack, no foreign missiles, just bullets. Now, the thing about that is, like I said, this wasn't necessarily the best expert on how to take down a grid. This wasn't one of the critical substations I've been warning you about. So we were able to restore power. What happens when it's those critical substations? And what happens when it happens in mass to lots of them? Imagine that. Multiplied across several states in the dead of winter with no backup systems in place. That is our Achilles heel. I've often warned you about it, and Russia knows it. They've written about it. It's in their doctrine to take down our power grid if they get into war with us. Same for China. Any country who's our adversary, they see that as a top priority. Soviet weapons expert, the late great Dr. Peter Vincent Pry, taught us that the Russians consider an EMP as a form of electronic warfare, kind of like hacking. And you might recall, and if you go back through my videos, you'll see I actually had the privilege of interviewing him on my channel several times, and actually had the privilege of him being a friend. I could call him up and talk to him at any time. And he was the leading expert in the United States on Soviet weapon systems. Take it from Kirk Weldon, who used to run the Homeland Security Committee in the House. Anyway, that's what he says. So what does this mean to you? What does it mean to all of us in this country and around the world? And my friends, you may be asking, what do I do with this information? I can't stop Putin. I can't control Washington. You can't write letters to Washington. Maybe they'll listen if enough people send them. You can check out the Freedom Restoration Foundation.org and see how to send these things. It's a website I've sponsored so that you can act. But chances are, we're heading down this slippery slope no matter what. So you can control how prepared you are, and that's what matters. Number one, energy. Have backup power, generators, solar, stored fuel. Don't assume that the grid will always be there, and don't assume it's coming back. If we have massive damage like I'm talking about, no. Number two, water. Municipal systems need electricities. Wells need pumps. Store water, filter water, and have redundancies. Maybe your well should have solar power for those pumps. That might help. May help if you got a few buckets that you can dip down into a well and haul water up. They do make narrow little buckets. I got a couple of them to use for drilled wells. You can find those on the internet if you look for them. Number three, food. Supply chains collapse quickly in a crisis. Oh yeah, there's only like 3 days food in the stores. So stock up on shelf-stable foods. Check out my website with preparewithgreg.com. Anyway, learn skills that provide food when the system breaks down. Gardening. I got lots of videos on this channel about how to garden in such a way you won't have to go to the store to buy stuff. But for that, you might want to buy seeds that are heirloom seeds so you can get the same plant when you replant them, like the hybrid seeds often sold in the stores. For that, you can go to True Leaf Market and Eden Brothers. The links will be below. Number four, communications. Don't rely on cell towers alone. Radios, ham, or even simple walkie-talkies can be lifesavers. They give you some force advantages, at least in the beginning, but, maybe not forever. Number five, community. No one survives alone, at least not usually. Build networks of trust. Share skills, share resources, and be ready to support each other. For that, you can check out the Survival Tribe Network, which I'll try to put a link to that below too. But number six, buy manual tools. And best place you can get them cheap. I mean, you can get them at Lowe's, you can get them at Home Depot, you can get them at a lot of your local hardware stores, feed stores sometimes. But you can get them at a flea market usually. In fact, you usually find really good sturdy ones at flea markets. I used to do a lot of videos of shopping at flea markets for manual tools. Why? What happens when all your power tools wear out? They're gone. That's why manual tools will rule in the long run. Anyway, my friends, in closing, history shows us that great wars often begin with words, threats, and incremental escalations. The assassination in Sarajevo lit a fuse for World War I. Hitler's threats against Poland set the stage for World War II. Now in our time, we're watching Russia threaten sabotage, nuclear escalation, and direct confrontation with the West. We are watching the U.S. and its allies inch closer to providing weapons that could change the war entirely. They're talking about no-fly zones over Western Ukraine, shooting down Russian drones and maybe jets, not just going into NATO territory. And if a Russian jet accidentally veers into NATO territory, they're already talking about shooting it down. We're on slippery slope, my friends. This is not a question just of whether our leaders can avoid catastrophe. The question is whether you are prepared if they fail. So I'll leave you with this hope for peace. Pray for wise decisions, but prepare for the storm, because storms are coming. And only those who are ready will endure. Are you ready, my friends? Are you ready? If not, get ready. Be prepared. You got to be prepared mentally, physically, and with the things you have. Because when the grid goes down, what you got is all you're going to have. So you need to be getting serious right now. I can't tell you the day of the hour, just like you can't tell the day of the hour of the second coming. I can't tell you the day of the hour of this either. But it's smelling all too close. It's kind of like when that thunderstorm is coming and you can smell the rain. I smell the rain. It's looking ugly, very ugly. Not to mention all this civil strife we have here at home, a lot of which may be in some part foreign sponsored. They would love nothing better than us tearing ourselves apart here at home while they do whatever they want to do abroad. Talking Civil War, War III, all rolled up in one big, ugly, rotten cheese ball. My friends, get ready. Get ready. With that, I'm going to say I thank you all for watching. Subscribe, bang the bell, and click all. Share my videos. Share them far and wide. I'm trying to bring you unique content here and content to tell you to be ready and some tips on how to get ready. That is important for you to know now more than ever. Again, are you ready? Are you ready? Get ready. Prep and pray and hope for a better day. With that, I'm going to say thank you all for watching. Greg out.